Google has recently started rolling out a change to the Play Store and how they display the permissions and access that an app is going to need to your device. So instead of the additional information being shown with the permissions listed, saying that this app is going to need access to things like your contacts or your location and things like that, it's just going to be this data safety list where the developer of the app is going to have to provide those details to the users about what access the app is going to have. And I presume that the reason Google is doing this is because Apple already did something similar with app tracking transparency starting in iOS 14, where now developers are required to provide this information in the app privacy section about how data is going to be linked to you and things like that. But it's important to point out that this isn't just relabeling of information or changing how that access information is being presented. Like, it's not just making it look prettier to the user, although in some ways maybe people are saying that it is. But in the past, the permissions list was actually something that Google was presenting to the user that's installing an app. Basically, Google would scan the app during their vetting process where they make sure that the app is legit and not a keylogger or something like that. Although Google does have a pretty poor track record of keeping malicious apps out of the App Store. But the point is that access list, things like, oh, this app needs to access your microphone, your calendar, your location and whatnot. That is something that Google was looking for and that Google was providing to the users, and they would base it off of the API calls that an app would make when it's installed on an Android device. So they're shifting away now. This shift away from an objective list of permissions to a developer disclosing the permissions themselves that an app would need. And it's being presented as a good thing. They're calling it a data safety section, for one. It's going to be listed for every single app in the App Store. So it's implied that it's safer, right, based on the name. And in their announcement to Android developers, they said that developers are going to need to provide this information to their App Store's listings to help Google Play users understand how your app collects and shares user data before they download it. And this would also have to include information about how data is collected and handled through third-party libraries or SDKs that are used in the apps as well. But the developers alone are responsible for making complete and accurate declarations in their App Store's listing on Google Play. And they also say that they're going to review the apps. They're still going to review them based on policy requirements, making sure that you're not installing a keylogger or that your app doesn't contain a keylogger. But they cannot make determinations on behalf of the developers of how they're going to handle user data, even though that's kind of what Google had been doing for years now, at least on a very basic level, by listing the things that the app would have listing the things on your device that the app would have access to, and then basically let the user use their own imagination for what kinds of things would be going on, right? If you install a calculator that needs access to your contacts, that's pretty sus. But I don't really think that this new approach is going to be better than what Google has already been doing, because at least before, when they presented the scan results of permissions that the app would ask for, you at least know that it's an objective, factual list of permissions that the app needs. Google probably isn't going to lie on behalf of the developers to the user about access that an app needs. That wouldn't make any sense for them to do. But of course, a developer might want to lie about the data that their app collects and make it seem like it's as minimal as possible or that it's a lot less than it actually is. Because user data is valuable, okay? You look at companies like Google or Facebook, Meta, they make lots and lots of money off of user data. But people generally don't like their data to be collected and then monetized, at least if they know that it's happening. And that's why Apple's app tracking transparency has been so effective, because it just gives people a simple message asking if they want to let Facebook or Google track their activity on their iPhone. And of course, the overwhelming majority of people say no, because boom, they can just tap a button. They don't have to switch operating systems or switch browsers or do anything that would require some effort, educate themselves on how their devices actually work. No, just press a button and boom, Apple's not going to let them track you. And the result of this has actually been that advertising through Facebook and Google are much less effective now, which has a huge downstream effect if you think about all the businesses that utilize Facebook and Google for ads. But yeah, most iOS users, they aren't seeing those ads. Most of the apps in the Google Play Store, and I think the iPhone store is like this as well, they have some ads and tracking built into them, right? Most of the apps are free, but then they have those as a way to monetize the free as in price app, not free software apps. So it's pretty clear, like it's not a stretch to see that there's a clear incentive to lie and say that your app doesn't collect as much data as it really does. So I decided to actually go to the App Store and see how well this change is being rolled out, because Google has already taken away the generated permissions list, right? All we see here is the data safety. So let's take a look at what it says for Signal. So we see no data is shared with third parties, data collected, personal info, phone number. Okay, so yeah, they do actually list this out. And then security practices, data is encrypted in transit, and then you can request that data be deleted. So it looks nice, right? But then how much detail are we really getting, right? It says that data is encrypted in transit, but it doesn't really give us details of how it's encrypted. So I guess you would have to just read the description of Signal to know that it's end-to-end encrypted. So then we look at Telegram, right? And we go to their data safety section. So they are a lot clearer on, all the information that's collected, right? Because Telegram does collect a lot more data than Signal. So at least they're not really trying to hide any of that. But again, when we look at security practices, it just says that data is encrypted in transit. Now, this is a bit of a problem, because with Telegram, the only time that your chats are being end-to-end encrypted is when you're doing secret messages, right? Whereas in Signal, everything is end-to-end encrypted. Most of your chats, like your channels, and basically by default, everything is going to be just server-side encrypted, but they don't give those details here. So again, it looks nice, right? It's formatted and it's got, I guess, pretty nice eye candy. It looks better than just a list of permissions, but it's not really giving you that much information. And then if we start looking at Meta's apps, oh, what a surprise. Messenger, they don't have their data safety information yet. WhatsApp, they don't have their data safety information yet. Facebook, they don't have their data safety information yet. So see, already the apps that are going to be collecting the most data from people, they're just refusing to put down their data safety information. Even Session has it. Okay, we go to Session's data safety, right? I mean, again, pretty accurate. This doesn't mention data being encrypted, though, which seems kind of weird. I mean, that's one of the main reasons to use Session. But I just point out Session because they're probably, I don't know, 1,000, maybe 100,000 times smaller as like a company goes compared to Meta. But yet they're able to fill out their data safety information, at least somewhat. And this also makes me wonder, what is Google going to do about apps that don't fill out this data safety information by the deadline? Because I think the deadline is July 20th, right? Yeah, by July 20th, 2022, all developers must declare how they collect and handle user data for the apps they publish on Google Play and provide details about how they protect this data through security practices like encryption. So I think it's safe to say that moving forward, if you're downloading your apps from the Google Play Store, you're going to be less informed, at least just going off the information they give you here, about what data the app actually has access to. And unless the developer decides to give you a very detailed explanation on their end, which, as you've seen so far, the explanations are mediocre at best, you're just not really going to know what's up with that app. So what I would recommend if you're an Android user is ideally switch to using F-Droid apps. I've been recommending this for a while now because F-Droid doesn't really even have apps with heavy ads or tracking in them in the first place. And if they do have those things, then it's going to be very clearly labeled as an anti-feature. Pretty much impossible to miss apps with anti-features in the F-Droid store, at least to not be aware that they have anti-features. But keep in mind, if the app isn't completely Libre and doesn't have all Libre dependencies, then that's also going to be listed as an anti-feature, which I think it's still pretty important to try to use Libre apps whenever possible, but I know probably most normal Android users aren't going to care that much about that. But yeah, if it has anti-features, just look up what those actually are and see if you're okay with that before installing. And you can also look at your apps in the Aurora store, because that is retaining the old permission list, at least for apps that were previously in the Play Store. I'm not sure if Aurora is going to create, like if they're going to create their own list moving forward, or if they're just retaining the one that Google used to provide. But that's how I download apps that aren't in the F-Droid store anyway. Generally, I'll go to F-Droid first, and then if I can't find the app there, I'll download it from the Aurora store. But I like doing that because it doesn't require you to use a Google account on your phone for downloading apps. So that's another solution if you aren't satisfied with Google's new data safety feature. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this update. Do you think it's a bad decision that Google is making? Or do you trust the developers of your apps to actually give you accurate information about the data that they collect? Like and share this video to hack the algorithm. Have a great day.